Hi, Romesh Shivastu here, Editor-in-Chief Sightsin Plus. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Please do subscribe this for the HR news, for HR updates, for conversation with the top-notch CHROs and business heads. Today, we are going to discuss about the employee engagement and productivity. Always, the employee engagement has been the key priority for all the organizations and HR leaders because it plays a pivotal role in ensuring the employee productivity and their retention in long run. But as I understand, the employee engagement is going to be the toughest job for the HR leaders in 2023. To discuss in detail about the employee engagement and productivity, today we have Mr. Tim Ringo, who is joining us from London. He is an author, a speaker, and HR advisor. Mr. Tim Ringo has recently authored a best-selling book that is the Solving Productivity Puzzle. So, welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting.
So, Tim, as you know, that workplace culture is utterly disrupted now. So, in your opinion, what are the HR challenges in 2023?
I think there's several. I mean, I would put a headline on the following one. I'd make this one the top one. I think it's going to be interesting for HR people to judge how to handle the uncertain economic conditions. So we're told in various parts of the world that recession is looming, but yet we still have a situation where people are struggling to find top talent and retain top talent. So it's kind of a dichotomy that we haven't really seen before. And I guess the question is, if recession does come along, is it going to switch away from a focus on talent acquisition and retention to starting to reduce heads in the organization, reduce headcount in the organization? So it's really quite uncertain at the moment, an unusual situation where we're told it's all doom and gloom in the economy. Yet everyone is still, and I was just at a dinner the other night with 8 chief people officers who all said, finding top talent and acquiring that talent is really difficult at the moment. So that's one we have to keep an eye on and figure out how to judge the situation. The second one is the sort of continued digitization of HR and the HR function, but also the workforce. And there's a couple of things there. A lot of people are looking to see, do they have the right operating model? Should they get new technology to underpin that? And then how do they put in place new processes and skills? Because being digital is a skill. How do they do that in HR and in the workforce broadly? So I think that's going to be a continued challenge into 2023. And then lastly, I think there's a real focus on, after the pandemic now, on people experience. So what do we mean by that? We mean the sort of technology they use, the location they work from, whether that's at work or at home or even somewhere else. And then how do we keep people engaged in what is becoming this sort of hybrid work environment? And how do we provide them technology and processes that actually make them better at their job, no matter where they're working? And I think those are kind of, for me, the 3 top challenges for 2023.
So, my personal question to you, Tim, ever have you been to India?
I have been, yes, many times.
So, which places you liked here?
I really enjoyed. I think that I was last in Calcutta, which was remarkable,
Oh,
and I was there during a test match for cricket, and I've never seen so many people in my life. It was quite interesting to see the. I think there were more people outside the stadium than inside the stadium, so it was quite a party.
So now I'm moving to the next set of questions. That what are the key factors that are affecting the engagement and the productivity in workplaces?
Yeah, I think what I hear, and I heard again just this week at dinner with chief people officers, that there's a lack of a consistent and high quality people experience. So from the time you're being recruited as a candidate through to your onboarding, through to then you're put in place, and your objectives, what work you get deployed to, it's very piecemeal, and it feels very piecemeal to the employee, meaning that it's very difficult for them to kind of understand what's coming next. And again, this is partially about operating model for HR, but it's also about the technology that you use. And these days, some of the top HR technology, it comes with that kind of integrated experience for people. So it's quite useful, but there's more to it than that. It's sort of educating people and helping them build the skills to to create and live inside this sort of integrated approach to talent management. And so I think that's one of the key factors. I think the second one is, and you still hear it over and over again, a lack of a really strong employee value proposition. So what is it the organization stands for, and how does that relate to the employee? Because more and more people want to go work for organizations that sort of fits with their personal values. And I think organizations need to get better at taking those sort of understanding people's personal values and then being able to sell them on your organization based on that. The next one I think is health and well-being, and a lot of investment has gone into this over the past few years, but it's been accelerated during the pandemic. But health and well-being is broader than just having a gym at the office. It's, there's a number of pieces to it. It's about people's mental health, particularly after coming out of crisis and coming through that. It's people's physical health, which a gym can help with, but it's also around healthcare and things. And then really importantly, and it gets missed sometimes, is the financial well-being. So there's a lot of talk, particularly in the United States and parts of Europe, about this idea of a living wage, so that people are getting paid enough that they don't have to worry about putting food on the table and those sorts of things. And so people become very stressed when their financial situation is stressed. So when I define well-being, I sort of look at these three characteristics: mental, physical, and then the sort of financial well-being. And these are the types of things that need to be put in place. And then lastly, I would say sort of talent mobility. So the opportunity for talent to move into different roles inside of an organization to get developed. And, if people don't find that, they're going to leave and go find it somewhere else. So it's about how does HR set up a situation where people can move around the organization over the years and do different things and build new skills. So those would be kind of the things I think are impacting productivity engagement at the moment.
I think, Tim, already you have covered certain points which are the kind of the factors which are affecting the employee engagement and productivity. But if I ask you some of the specific point as your advice, as the what is your tips to boost the employee engagement part in coming year 2023?
Yeah, I think I think the things to improve that, or some of the things that I sort of mentioned earlier, which is around that that employee value proposition that people can relate to. I think putting in place a really good people experience from the time you're a candidate through to when you leave the organization. So do something I like to call create moments that matter. So when people encounter training programs, it's a good experience. When people encounter performance management discussions, it's a good experience. I think these things we have to get much better at and understand that really it's very similar to a customer, and how you would treat a customer. You'd want to treat an employee in a very similar way, in that their experience throughout the year in terms of their sort of talent management is a positive one. And I think that's a big part of it. And I do believe that a number of organizations are working hard on this. They're changing their operating models, they're changing their technology, they're changing the processes towards this idea that I like to talk about, which is putting those things in place that are all about making people better. Quite often we put technology and processes and things in place around compliance, that make sure that people are doing things correctly or are adhering to regulations, and those are important. But really, it's almost more important that we're focused on technology and processes that actually help people become better at work. And I think that's a big part of building productivity. And when I was doing my research, for solving the productivity puzzle, my latest book, I found that this kind of focus on just rolling out technology over and over again that isn't about making people better is making productivity worse. And so that's something we have to really focus on, I think.
Actually, as you know, that already a lot of discussion is going on about the quiet quitting, about the moonlighting. So these are the new buzzwords as of now for the discussion. So how do you
Yeah.
see the loyalty trends in 2023? We are saying that moonlighting is ethical, non-ethical. A lot of discussion is there. So what do you think about the loyalty in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that people are engaged in what's called quiet quitting and moonlighting is just a symptom of the things that we're not doing very well in the organization, right? We're not gaining their loyalty by fixing some of the things I've talked about. And so they are sort of trying out things on the side. Some people call it a side hustle. But really, I think quiet quitting and moonlighting is different. I'm really unsatisfied in my work, but I need the money, but I'm also looking at and doing other things for others. And that really is not valuable to the employee. It's certainly not valuable to the organization. And I think what we're seeing, because these terms have emerged, they're sort of, the quiet quitting is fairly new. Moonlighting's been around for decades. But it shows we have a problem with loyalty. And I think it goes back to people's experience in organizations. They don't feel connected to that organization. They don't feel supported when they're in that organization. And they don't see kind of a career path forward. There's potentially nowhere else to go inside the organization to build new skills. So this idea of talent mobility. And that's why we're seeing loyalty in many cases is quite low. And people are looking to do things on the side while they're trying to find somewhere that they can work that's like what I described. And so I think it's really quite a shame, and it is growing rapidly, particularly after the pandemic. A lot of people are looking at maybe whole new careers, new types of careers, maybe reskilling even. And I just think it's emblematic of HR organizations and organizations in general are not doing a good job on the things that we talked about before. Because if you create a situation where people have good experience at work, they align to the purpose of the organization, and oh, by the way, you're going to get to move around and do different things inside the organization, you're very unlikely to leave, and you're very unlikely to sort of end up in a situation where you've kind of been quietly quitting and you're moonlighting on the side. So that would be my sort of thoughts on it.
I think we have discussed about the employee engagement and the productivity part. So anything important which we didn't touch at? So any concluding remark like this?
Yeah, I think that one thing that we haven't talked about, I think is really going to be very important in the coming years, 2023 and onwards, is about this idea of strategic workforce planning, which sounds very boring, not very exciting, but it's absolutely going to be critical going forward to also address some of the things we've been talking about. So let me explain what I'm describing. Essentially, what I'm describing, and I talk about this in the book, is really simple. Strategic workforce planning is about getting the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time with the right motivation. And organizations that do this really well, and you can never do it 100% of the time for somebody, but organizations that can get the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time, 60% of the time, just say for put a number on it, are very high performing organizations, and people want to stay in those kind of organizations because it gives that opportunity to understand where you could go, what you could do now, what you could do in the future. And I think a number of universities are creating whole degree programs around strategic workforce planning in their business degrees, and that's how important it's going to become going forward, which is that organizations and HR get really good about this strategic workforce planning process and operations.
So thank you so much, Tim, for joining us, the conversation, and sharing your wonderful thoughts.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you.